Chapter 6 The Hardest Kind of Homeless. There are many levels of homelessness. Some are worse than others. Whether you're sleeping in your car, crashing on a friend's couch, or camping in the woods, you're homeless. The hardest thing about being homeless on any level is doing it without something to look forward to. At this point in my life, I've been homeless in a van, a truck, and next to some railroad tracks. But each time I had something to lean on, whether it was a job, a woman, or just a check coming in the mail. Now I was experiencing something new, undeniable bottom of the barrel next to death homelessness. My first day of it I spent in North Star Mall. It was early July and dangerous to be outside. I found a water fountain at the mall's drinking fountains, the same one we used as kids, and sat at a bench in front of them reading old newspapers. It was nice to be in the air conditioning and watch women saunter by. After a few hours, I got up and walked around, looked in all the shop's windows, and admired the clothes that I was too poor to even recognize the label. Michael wasn't living at Mom's house at the time, so there was no one there to sneak me food or a blanket. The only place I could think to go was the woods by our old middle school, so for the next few days, I slept in a ditch and lived off candy I stole from the grocery store. One morning, I got caught shoplifting by a priest, and I saw it as a sign to pack my bag, abandon my drainage ditch, and walk to the other end of town to find my old pal John Hersey. I hadn't seen him in months, but I figured we were still friends. It took a while to get a hold of him, and when I did, I was surprised to see he wasn't too thrilled to hear about what I'd been going through. He used to love my stories when my apartment was the official hangout spot for him and his crew, but now he moved out of his parents' house and didn't need me or my place. Hershey knew that after everything I'd done for him, he was at least obligated to put me up for a few nights. So I started hanging out with him and his stoner crowd again, but it was completely different this time around. I felt like a burden. Hershey acted like I was a criminal. Whenever he'd leave the apartment, he'd say, "Don't steal anything." The thought never crossed my mind until he rudely suggested it. Hershey said he wanted to help, but the whole time I was there, he made me feel like dirt. I was about to turn 23, and he made a point to remind me of my age and lack of education almost daily. "Greg, when are you going to get your life together?" he would ask. "You've known me for about a year," I told him. "It's always the same old story with you," he said. "You're halfway to 30, claim to be a writer, but never been to college or wrote anything. Look at me, I work part-time and go to community college." The most ignorant people in the world are kids in their early 20s who still live off their parents' money. Hershey couldn't grasp the fact that it was harder for me to go to college than it was for him. All he had to do was ask Daddy. Most parents encourage a college education. Hershey was enrolled part-time at San Antonio Community College, but from the way he was talking, you'd think he was an Ivy League scholar. His parents paid his rent and tuition, but just like most of the kids in his position, he thought he'd be doing just as well without their help. "You're going to be 23, and you don't even have a single college credit," he said. "Even if you started going to school, like right now, today, you wouldn't even graduate until you're 28. "I'm taking a different path," I told him. "As long as I graduate by the time I'm 30, that's fine with me. There's no time limit." "You think most people graduate college when they're 30? He asked. "I'm not most people," I told him. I stayed with Hershey for about a week. I tried to make myself scarce, but he never gave me a key and obviously didn't want me there. One Friday, I came home late from day labor and he wouldn't answer the door. I knew he was inside. I could hear him and his friends giggling. I left his porch and never saw him or his crew again. I used my last 50 cents to call Mom. She said I could sleep in her backyard for a night or two if Guy didn't see me. So I trekked across the north side, dangerously along the side of Loop 410, all the way from Hershey's apartment to Mom's backyard. It took me almost all night. When I got there early the next morning, I was so happy Guy wasn't home. You appreciate the little things when you're living on the street. Mom let me inside and made me a hamburger. I scarfed it down and passed out on our couch while she sat next to me and watched TV. Mom's couch never felt so comfortable. She told me everything was going to work itself out and things would be better someday. Everyone needs a little parental support now and then. She couldn't take me in or give me a place to stay, but she made me feel better. Guy got home later that afternoon, so I had to peel myself off Mom's couch and go back inside. Before I left, she gave me a hug and $3. When I left her house and started walking, I saw Michael headed my way. He had the same idea as me. He was looking for some food and parental support. He told me he was also there to raid her garage for supplies to help him build the fort he had started setting up in a park. I need a few things, he said. Trash bags, blankets, duct tape, the usual. I'm building a shelter. I was happy to see Michael being productive, but then he said he'd been hanging out with Benny's older, convicted child molester half brother, Benny Ray. Michael said Benny Ray asked him to be his roommate in a ghetto one bedroom apartment in Kirby, Texas, a few miles east of town. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but we'd fallen on tough times. Of course, I didn't want to live with him, Michael said, and he probably only wants me because of his gay issue. Yeah, that's probably the case, I told him. Better watch your back. He's an old man, Michael said. Not that bad. Was he or wasn't he convicted of raping little boys? Yeah, he was in the past, Michael said. He's obviously a little messed up. It's not like I want to live with him, but he's never tried anything with me. I don't think he would, and I'm not a little boy. Michael said he was going to move in as soon as Benny Ray's parole officer okayed it. I told him I didn't like the idea, not one bit, and I'd be over there to check up on him almost daily. Benny Ray didn't look scary. He was a bald and skinny old man in his late 50s. If you saw him on the street, you wouldn't find him the least bit threatening, but the guy went to prison for playing with little boys, his prepubescent cousins. A registered sex offender, dude had to wear an ankle bracelet and was forbidden to go near babies or children. We know Benny Jr. since we were door-to-door newspaper salesmen for John. He was a very good person, one of the best, a harmless pothead, but his older half-brother, Benny Ray, was a convicted pedo with an appetite for hard drugs and little boys. I called Michael a few days later to try to change his mind, but he'd already moved in. Ray's parole officer couldn't object. They were both adults and weren't breaking any laws. As long as Benny Ray didn't live with any kids, there wasn't anything the parole officer could do. All she had left was her semblance of authority. Later that week, I went and found Benny Jr. to see what he thought about our brothers living together. He told me he'd driven to their new apartment in Kirby, Texas to visit them out of concern and said he saw them parading around the apartment wearing nothing but boxer shorts. Benny Jr. had just started a satellite sales and installation company at his apartment. He needed someone to help him sell the satellite dishes and subscriptions, and the first person he thought of was me. Benny said I could live on his couch if I helped him sell every morning. I took him up on the offer because I needed a place to stay, but most importantly, his new place was in eyesight of Michael and Benny Ray. For the next couple months, Benny and I'd go door to door around the north side of San Antonio every morning. We made good money, but my heart wasn't in it, and I figured Benny most likely didn't have the required paperwork, permit, or business license anyway. I used most of the money I made on expensive marijuana and cheese enchiladas at a tiny Mexican restaurant nearby. The Tranquil Diner became a second home for me while I stayed with Benny's family. At least once a day, I'd gather my thoughts, get away from the crying baby, Benny the Third, and relax under the quiet mariachi music. We'd usually work a few hours every morning. Benny would drop me off in a nice neighborhood, and I knock on a few doors, sweet talk some old ladies, get a few satellite subscription sales, and be back in Kirby sitting on his couch hitting the bong and flipping through a million cable channels by lunchtime. Sometimes Benny would get out of the car and knock on a few doors with me. It felt exactly like it did back in the day when we were teenagers selling subscriptions for John. Benny's Jr.'s apartment was a safe place compared to where Michael was staying with Benny Ray. Benny Ray's parole officer would occasionally come by to check up on him, but she'd always let him know when she was coming, which gave him ample time to hide the drugs. Michael finally came to his senses after Benny Ray started walking around their apartment naked. I've seen too much, he confided in me. The next day we brainstormed an escape plan. I was rational and told Michael that we should get jobs on the north side and find a cheap apartment of our own. But Michael wanted more of an adventure. The idea came during a New Year's Eve party at Benny Ray's, given to us by an unsuspecting source. One of Benny Jr.'s friends was telling an elaborate bullshit story about walking to Austin from San Antonio in one night. The most amazing part of this man's fairy tale was that everyone in the room, besides Michael and me, actually believed his rubbish. Michael and I rolled our eyes during his story. Both of us had taken the trip by car to Austin enough times and trekked enough miles around foot to know that it would be impossible to walk from Austin to San Antonio in one night. A few minutes later, we knew what we were going to do. We were going to do what this asshole claimed he did. We were going to walk from San Antonio to Austin. Michael loved the idea and was the one really pushing it forward. I asked questions that gave us a chance to think it over. We don't have any money, I told him. We'll just find jobs when we get there, he said. We don't have any food, I said. We'll just raid Mom's pantry before we leave, he told me. It's January, I screamed. What if we freeze? It's not that cold. This is Texas. Even if it does get cold, we'll just build a fire or steal some blankets. We're grown men. He made some good points, and we didn't have anything to lose. I wasn't doing much besides waiting for my financial aid to go to college. What about me going to school? Maybe someday UT, I asked. You want to go to UT, right? He said. You could take the entry test in Austin and start going to community college there next to UT. We kept our plan a secret. We couldn't tell Benny Ray because he would have flipped out and done something dramatic like rape Michael. I couldn't tell Benny Jr. because he would have done anything to keep me to stay. He wouldn't have hurt me, but I was his key to his business. Without me, he had no sales, no dishes to install, and not much money. We told Mom a few hours before we left. At first, she didn't believe us and acted like we were kidding, a guise to how scared she actually felt. After she realized we were serious, she started asking us questions like where would we sleep, how would we stay warm, and what if someone hurt us. Both of us reassured her that we'd take care of each other. We were originally going to start walking to Austin from Mom's house, but she offered us a ride to the edge of San Antonio. I didn't let her drive that far out of the neighborhood, but she said she'd make an exception this time. Before we got out of the car, she began crying and made us promise that we'd be okay. This is for the best, I said. We're gonna be something someday. I've always had a way of calming Mom's nerves whenever tough situations arose for Michael or me. I've had lots of practice. I kept her sane when I was in jail, during various homeless stints, and when I was addicted to cocaine. Somehow, I convinced her that we do great things, make her proud, and give her a bunch of grandchildren. At least you'll have plenty of material to write about when you're a famous author, she told me before I got out of the car. We hit the road and didn't look back. We couldn't look back. The first day, we must have walked 20 miles straight, all the way to Highway 1604. It felt like we weren't just walking for ourselves, we were walking for Mom. That was from the book Gonzo Education, Chapter 6, Hardest Kind of Homeless. It's written by Gregory Brandt. That's me. It's available for free on Kindle. You can get it on Amazon for like $5 or $6. Um, it's this book I'm really proud of, and thanks for listening. Click the thumbs up button, and continue listening, and continue. Go ahead and check out my other channels as well.